Washington Post reported this last week. They reported that Elon Musk's fortune comes from $38 billion in government loans and contracts. You read this article, you realize that Elon Musk would be nowhere without early funding from the federal government. $38 billion in government loans and contracts. I've been over this. I told you how Tesla was going belly up in 2008, but thanks to Obama's stimulus plan, he was able to get low-cost loans backed by the United States government. Here's another example of how the billionaires suck off the government teat while calling the people who work for the government parasites. The FAA, that's the people who keep the planes up in the air, they are canceling Verizon's $2.4 billion communications contract. And for some reason, I don't know why, they've decided to hand that contract over to the Starlink satellite company. I wonder who owns Starlink Satellite. Oh, right, Elon Musk. Meanwhile, Elon Musk is begging retired FAA workers to come back to work. For some reason, they're pissed off at the government. Did something happen? Did Elon Musk tell the head of the FAA to quit on Inauguration Day because the head of the FAA fined SpaceX close to $600,000 for violating safety procedures during their launches? So Elon Musk said, you need to go. You think that might be a reason FAA employees don't want to come back? Politico reporting the USDA, that would be the Department of Agriculture, is scrambling now to rehire all the bird flu experts that Elon Musk accidentally fired. Well, it's a good thing we don't have bird flu. We dodged a bullet. Because if this would be serious, if Elon Musk fired the people who were in charge of studying bird flu. But luckily, we don't have, anything going on that's spreading to cattle. Marjorie Taylor Greene says federal workers don't deserve to be paid. I know one federal worker doesn't deserve to be paid. You're looking at her. Well, Marjorie hasn't been the same when it comes to government ever since the FAA refused to do anything about those transgender drones she keeps saying over her home. She keeps calling the FAA and says they're transgender drones flying over my house. Do something about it. Well, Brian Glenn is a correspondent for the far-right Real America's Voice news organization. He's not a journalist, so he's allowed now inside the Oval Office. He was the one who asked President Zelensky on Friday, why don't you wear a suit, unquote. He was the one who asked that question. Of course, if Zelensky showed up in a suit, they'd be saying, the man's people are at war and he's wearing a $3,000 suit, right? You can't win. Well, that was Brian Glenn. He is with the far-right Real America's Voice news organization. These are the one on the right. He was allowed in the meeting. Not Reuters, not the Associated Press, but Brian Glenn and, of course, the Russian news agency TASS. TASS was allowed inside the meeting. A propaganda arm for Putin was allowed in the meeting, but not the Associated Press or Reuters. Well, Brian Glenn has been dating Marjorie Taylor Greene, the one who says government employees don't deserve to get paid. Brian Glenn, who asked the question, this is a picture of him. He's been dating Marjorie Taylor Greene for a little more than 2 years. This is a picture from a year and a half ago, the summer of 2023, when they went public with their relationship while they were hiking in Georgia. He posted a shirtless photo of himself with Marjorie, and on Twitter, they were hiking in the summer of 2023. Hey, he looks pretty good, right? Buff. I should look so good. Here he is on Marjorie Taylor's front porch in the autumn of that year, 2023, looking a little less buff. Perhaps it's beginning to sink in who he's dating. Marjorie Taylor Greene, a raw nerve of roid rage. Doesn't look so good. Not like he did 3 months earlier when he and Marjorie first started seeing each other. Here is Brian Glenn, Marjorie's boyfriend, 7. What do the French say? You get the face you deserve. Here he is 7 months into his relationship with Marjorie Taylor Greene. It's 2024. He's out on the campaign trail covering the presidential election. Hey, I've been out on the road. Election years are tough. Bad food, long hours, no time to exercise. Brian Glenn not looking as good as he did less than a year earlier when he looked pretty buff. Again, this picture is Brian Glenn and Marjorie the first week into his relationship with Marjorie Taylor Greene, and fewer than 2 years? Here he is Friday looking like he was force-fed a bad clam. A year and a half into his relationship with Marjorie Taylor Greene, Brian Glenn goes from this to this. Instead of asking Zelensky why he isn't wearing a suit, Brian Glenn, why aren't you wearing a bag over your face? By the way, I didn't alter his face. Now, I tell you when I alter somebody's face. I did not do this. I promise you, I did not do this. I mean, if I wanted to alter his face, I would do this. And quite frankly, I think that's probably in about 2 more weeks when Marjorie's roid rage gets even worse. Okay? So if I wanted to alter his face, that's what I would do. And that's what he's eventually going to be looking like. From this to this, this is Marjorie Taylor Greene messing with his face, okay? This is me messing with his face, just so we're clear here, okay? Donald Trump says the Environmental Protection Agency's workforce is about to be slashed by 65%. The EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, protects our environment. And that's a very large portfolio. Let's pick one sliver of the environment. Let's air pollution, okay? There's water pollution, there's pollution of our rivers, our oceans, our wetlands, our farmland. But let's just go with air pollution. Forget that it's been estimated air pollution in the United States causes tens of thousands of deaths each year from, among other things, heart attacks, strokes, and asthma. Forget that from a purely economic standpoint. Air pollution is costing America's GDP $1 trillion a year in lost productivity. That's according to Ellis Robinson of Carnegie Mellon University. Now, you can believe Ellis Robinson from Carnegie Mellon University, or you might want to check out what Jimmy Dore has to say. Personally, I'm going to go with Ellis Robinson from Carnegie Mellon University. The Environmental Protection Agency's budget is $45 billion this year to protect our entire environment. When I talk about $1 trillion, that's just what air pollution costs our economy each year. In what world does firing people who combat air pollution make economic sense? It doesn't. By gutting the EPA, you're just providing another subsidy to the oil companies. So they're less regulated. They have to pay fewer fines. Greed, fear, ignorance, stupidity. That is MAGA's basic food group. And it destroys not just government and the environment, it destroys our economy. Again, I don't care right now about the tens of thousands of people who die each year from air pollution. I'm just talking about dollars and cents. Air pollution destroys jobs, costs us trillions. It's a disaster for every American except the ones who donate to Donald Trump, because they benefit temporarily from greed, fear, ignorance, and stupidity. Eventually, it catches up with them. It always does. The Washington Post is reporting that USAID's acting deputy, this is an example of what I'm talking about. USAID's acting deputy inspector general, Mark Meyer, is hiding a report revealing the devastation caused by Trump's cutbacks to our government agency, that would be USAID, which is responsible for humanitarian aid. So the inspector general, according to an exclusive report in the Washington Post, is hiding this report. Why isn't he making it public? The Washington Post says this report on how cutbacks are threatening peace in the Sudan, in Gaza, this report is being kept from Donald Trump and Elon Musk for fear of retaliation and retribution. This is Hitler in the bunker crap. It's why dictators, authoritarians eventually fail. They destroy a lot of lives along the way, but they always fail because the people around them are terrified of bringing them bad news. And by the time an authoritarian discovers bad news, it's a disaster. It's the little thing that you didn't get looked at that's now a tumor. Too late. This is why Donald Trump, for example, looks the way he does. Nobody around him will ever say, really? You're going to go out in public like that? Cutting humanitarian aid is not just greedy, it's short-sighted and stupid. Forget about saving lives. I'm talking from a purely America First standpoint. Cutting humanitarian aid is stupid. Things go from bad to worst when the richest country in the history of civilization, a country, ours, that has sucked most of these poor countries completely dry. Things get worse when the country that helped contribute to some of their poverty cuts off foreign assistance. It's bad business sense. Forget famine, forget the HEPFAR, AIDS patient, forget people dying because of this. I'm just talking dollars and cents with my MAGA friends. It's not cost effective to shut down USAID because when you shut down humanitarian aid, the next thing you know, we're sending in the military. When you shut down humanitarian aid, suddenly we're fighting wars because China is providing all the foreign aid, which means America can't access the natural resources inside those impoverished nations. Natural resources, rare earth minerals that we need to keep this economy going. Isolationism and America First doesn't work because I need my coffee beans. And they're not growing enough coffee beans here in America. I need to make sure the countries that grow my coffee beans, these countries that rely on child labor, yes, there's been reporting that Starbucks has children picking coffee beans in Central America. They have plausible deniability, but Channel 4 in the United Kingdom reported on this. My non-union burnt Starbucks coffee beans, according to Channel 4, some of them are picked by children. But I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about I need my caffeine. And these countries that give me my caffeine, I need them to have stable governments so my coffee beans arrive. And that means humanitarian aid. Forget education, having a childhood, forget that. I'm an American. I just want my coffee beans. So I don't want those kids to die. I want them to be strong enough to pick my coffee beans. And that requires humanitarian assistance. We don't want them dying or rising up against the oligarch class in, say, Central America and shutting down the flow of my coffee beans. Not smart to cut off humanitarian aid. But Trump blames foreign aid for why Americans can't scrape together $500 for a medical emergency. That's what they want you to believe. As though we're going to cut off foreign aid and suddenly there's going to be universal health care in America. That's what Trump is very good at doing to stupid Americans. And, I'm beginning to believe we might have a few in this country. I know it's hard to believe. He is able to convince the MAGA morons. Poor countries are getting one past us. They're taking advantage of us. The people in the Sudan, the people in Gaza, the kids picking our beans in Guatemala or Honduras or El Salvador, the people in Africa desperately in need of food, water, and HIV medicine. They're the ones who are taking advantage of us. Wow, we must be really stupid if they can get one past us. People who are dying from AIDS, malnutrition, dehydration, and they're still able to get one past us? We should be ashamed of ourselves. Well, by cutting off humanitarian aid, it's how David Feldman is going to end up without coffee beans or being forced to pay more for coffee beans. America is a $30 trillion a year economy, $45 billion a year on humanitarian assistance out of a $30 trillion a year economy isn't even a drop in the bucket. And it's a great return on our investment. $45 billion, we get a $30 trillion a year economy. Roughly about 1/3 of our economy is strip mining other countries and stealing their natural paying them for their natural resources, their lumber, rare earths, oil, and of course, coffee beans. And to make sure nobody turns off the spigot of all these necessary items that keep our economy growing, we sacrifice human rights on the altar of prosperity by propping up brutal dictators who strip their citizens, who are picking our coffee beans, of their freedom. And then, when they need to come here, because the country is overrun by death squads rounding up union organizers, we call it an invasion. We lend these countries money they can't possibly pay back, and then we force them to privatize government services in such a way that benefits Wall Street bankers, all the while blaming their citizens for needing humanitarian assistance. As George W. Bush once said, "Why do they hate us?" That's what he said before invading Iraq. Why does the world hate us? One would think foreign aid, $45 billion a year, would be a small price to pay for all that we get from the rest of the world. Steal. Less than 1% of America's entire federal budget is $45 billion. Less than 1% of the budget to keep our economy humming, and more importantly, to keep our soldiers out of harm's way. Because every dollar you spend on humanitarian aid is $100 not spent sending our soldiers off to fight inside a country whose natural resources we need. That's why President John F. Kennedy created U.S. aid to stabilize countries in need so they wouldn't fall under the Soviet sphere of influence, so we wouldn't have to fight wars in countries that are suffering, that are suddenly turning to Marxism because Russia's offering something that we're not. Humanitarian aid creates stability in regions and makes the people who live there less prone to toppling their governments, which means fewer civil wars, and fewer civil wars overseas means we don't have to send our soldiers, or as Smedley Butler once called them, our gangsters for capitalism, into the region to protect Wall Street profits. Not talking about saving lives. I'm just talking dollars and cents. But why would you expect Donald Trump, who went bankrupt 6 times, to understand any of this? The genius, Elon Musk, who'd be nothing without our federal government's assistance. He's insisting U.S. aid is, quote, a criminal organization that needs to die, unquote. So send one of your kids. When we have to go fight a war because we didn't send humanitarian aid, send one of your 14 children to go fight that war, Elon Musk. He welcomed his 14th child over the weekend. Siobhan Zillis gave him his 14th child. That doesn't seem efficient. 14 children, not cost effective. 14 children with 4 or 5 separate women he's not married to. And yet the evangelical Christians have no problem with this guy. She is with Neuralink. They are the people planting chips inside your skull. Neuralink. Musk owns Neuralink. It's regulated by the FDA, which, as luck would somehow have it, is now regulated by Elon Musk. How odd that the guy sticking chips in our brains is regulating the regulators. This is a guy who believes in transhuman evolution. You want to put your fate in the hands of somebody who believes there are humans and then transhumans. And by transhumans, I don't mean his daughter, who he stopped talking to. He's talking about ketamine-induced superiority that comes, gene editing, gene splicing, Neuralink chips in your brain. This is the singularity. He wants a new type of human where you make a choice. Will you become one with the machines? That's where he's going. And the ones who are not willing to embrace the singularity in his fevered mind, they deserve to die off like the dinosaurs. This is evolution. This is what he believes.